I do recognize the cells will bulge. We're using the all-in-one system here. We need to actually connect the cells, which we're going to be doing with our bus bars. Inverter is connected with the main positive, main negative. Hopefully no sparks fly. Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 19 of my box truck conversion van build. Today we're going to be building some lithium iron phosphate batteries from scratch. What you're looking at here are the individual cells that I ordered from China. Now, the reason I'm doing it this way is because you actually get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of energy density than you would by going with a manufacturer such as Battleborn. It's actually not that difficult to build a battery on your own. Really, all you need to do is get the cells, connect the cells, add a battery management system, and then build some kind of housing to protect that battery from the elements, from vibration, from damage. Alright, go 1 1/4 screws? No, I'm thinking 1.5. There we go. Now this case is also going to have a compression factor built into it. What that means is these cells are going to be compressed against each other to minimize the amount of bulging that will happen as they charge. So now we have some holes on either end for our threaded rods to go through. This little jig I made just out of some scrap wood to give me a 90-degree angle so that I can set these batteries in. There we go. So I use my jig here, and which allows it to be aligned on the X and Y axis. Put some mounting tape in between in the center, make sure these things are fastened together, and now we've got 8 perfectly aligned cells ready to go. Put it in our box. Unfortunately, for the first half of this build, I'm actually missing some of the video footage, so there are some parts missing, but I think you can get the general overall picture from what we got. So here's what it looks like on the inside. You can see we've got I measured it out, so we've got a decent gap along here. These won't be moving, vibrating, or anything like that. I'm gonna get some foam right next to this rod on the battery cells, just in case something does happen and it impacts the cells. I don't want to have any friction or, impact damage. Some of the video that got lost included me wrapping these cells with anti-static discharge tape. That's what you see, that yellow stuff there. And this is just to kind of help the cells stay together. They are already fastened together with the mounting tape between them, but this is just a little extra. Before we can actually put the nuts on here, we need to cut these, otherwise it's going to take forever to thread that whole thing with that actual lock nut. So let's go ahead and trim these off real quick. If you've been watching battery builds for a while on YouTube, you'll see that some people at this point in the build will actually put some kind of metal angle across here to prevent this board from flexing, which it will flex a little bit once we put this under tension. I'm not going that far. I'm not concerned about applying exact perfect level of compression so that it can maximize the battery life to 99.999% of its optimal life output. I'm doing it because I do recognize the cells will bulge and I want to provide a little bit, but I'm not going above and beyond to get too crazy about the compression here. This is not the video you want to watch if you're trying to answer the question of should I or should I not compress my cells. Some of the footage that was lost also is me tightening those screws and actually putting tension on those threaded rods. Really all I did was hand tighten them and then add a few extra cranks with a socket wrench to the point to where those boards just barely started to flex. Connects to the positive pole of the first string of batteries and then connects to the positive pole of each string of batteries in turn. So black one attaches here. First red attaches here, second red, third red, fourth red, fifth red, etc., etc. While we're wiring this up, we need to actually connect the cells, which we're going to be doing with our bus bars. This is going to connect the negative to the positive of each cell, like so. Now, if you're not building your own batteries, you probably won't know this, but the reason we have to attach one string to every battery cell is for active cell balancing. and cell monitoring. So I'm gonna have a Bluetooth app for the BMSs to connect to my phone or my computer. I can monitor each individual cell voltage, make sure they're all balanced and operating properly, just to give me as many metrics as possible to monitor the health of my battery. Numbering on here: black is 1, red 2, red 3, third cell. I will say this video is not intended to be like a how to build your own battery type deal. There's a lot of that out there already. I'm not going to do it better than any of those guys. This is just a video of me building my battery. Okay, I'm going to loosen this one up a little bit because I need to attach our main negative from the BMS after we put the top on. Okay, so we'll send this through. Don't want to tighten these too much because you can easily strip out those terminals. I'll go through and tighten the rest later. Okay, I think we can fasten the BMS to the actual wood now. So this is what's going to go to our inverter. Don't have a plan for this yet, exactly how that's going to connect, but we'll figure it out. So what I'm doing here is drilling holes for our threaded inserts. Now, this is going to allow me to attach and detach the lid of the battery case without damaging the wood over time, as if I was using screws. It's going to be a little tight. I got the ones with the rim on the top, so when this is all the way in, it should look nice and clean, just like that. This is our temperature sensor. I've got some Kapton tape there. We're going to tap it right to go on top for this one. Temperature sensor dead center of the battery. And then we can feed the connector up through here. Connect it to the appropriate port. And last but not least, Bluetooth transceiver. Should I have drilled these holes much sooner? Yes. This carrying method isn't really all that important. So really, this is just to get the battery into the truck for the first time and maybe move it around for maintenance occasionally throughout the lifetime. So what we've got here is a mock-up of our utility cabinet inside the truck. I wanted to be able to lay everything out, get the wiring precise before I get it in the truck. So we're gonna get all of our components mocked up on here, get all the wiring in, and then simply transfer it to the truck. Okay, that's about it. Those are the main components going in the truck. It's going to be a lot simpler than most of the van builds you see because we're using the all-in-one system here. Next step is to get the fuses installed in the batteries and then start wiring the main positive out to the disconnect. So our main positive terminal is right here. We need to make this fuse part of that circuit. We need to make it as close as possible to the battery. So I'm thinking we also need to make it accessible. If the fuse blows us for whatever reason, I need to be able to access it quickly and easily. So I'm thinking right on the front of the battery, just like that. I can have the cable come out through here, connect there. The cable from here go back into the battery, up through to the front of the battery. It's also very important when you have batteries in parallel that the run of cable from the bus bar to the battery cells themselves is the same exact distance. If there are different distances, you're going to have different loads, different discharge rates on the batteries, and over time, that will lead to an imbalance of your cells. So since my main disconnect and my positive bus bar are going to be way back here, I want to run this cable up back through the battery, the length, and then have it come out the top right next to the battery negative. Alright, so we need to put a cap on this guy. To do so, we have a crimping tool, hammer, heat shrink, and of course, terminal ring itself. About there. Okay, don't want to cut my finger. There we go. Stamps it in there pretty good. That is never ever going to come off there. And with the main positives coming out of the batteries now, I'm able to actually test and measure the actual runs that are going to be part of the circuits themselves. So I'm completing the mock-up here, just kind of playing and toying with different placements of components, measuring cable runs, and trying to find the most efficient way possible to place all of these components inside the truck. Now before I can mount any of these parts inside the truck, I need a safe surface for electrical components to be mounted to, and I chose to use a hardy backer board. This is a concrete fiber board. This will not light on fire, this will not conduct electricity, it can heat up if it has to without any issue. So I'm using this instead of going directly to the wood inside the utility cabinet itself. Before we mount anything to this, I'm going to paint it black to make it look lighter, make it look cooler, but also seal in the dust. This will generate dust over time. What you don't see is me putting on about 3 coats each on this piece and the other piece. There were 2 pieces in total. And unfortunately, I did lose the footage of me mounting these inside the utility cabinet themselves, so we're going to skip that and go directly to starting the cabinet. We're starting with the 12-volt fuse panel and going to the 110 breaker box. Dude, how did I get 10 bugs in here? Guess it's getting that time of the year, huh? Next up is our solar panel disconnect breaker box. Frick off. I placed a negative bus bar close enough so that both BMSs can attach directly to it. Positive bus bar goes right next to that just for symmetry and proximity. Son of a... Now we can go from the disconnect the main bus bar. One of the things that's important to keep in mind is that shorter cable lengths are always better in these systems, not only because it's cheaper, but because electricity, it's less efficient over longer distance of cable runs. So you would actually need a thicker cable for longer runs. Hence the reason why I'm keeping everything as short and efficient as possible here. Alright, so I think this is about it. We've got our 12-volt breaker panel connected with the negative and the positive from the converter, sorry. This is the inverter, that's the converter. Positives and negatives are attached to the net. The bus bars are connected, coming from the fuse. Inverter is connected with the main positive, main negative. I think the only thing we have left to do is connect the solar from the ceiling down and then across to here. Now, it's important to note that these solar cables are actually disconnected on the roof themselves still. So there is no load on those as I'm placing these in there. You always want to make sure that you don't have any load coming in when you're playing with the wiring. Oh, frick. Bigger scissors. No problem. Now, the purpose of these ferrules is to keep the individual strands of the wires compacted together as they get placed into the compressive outlet here. Because both here and on the breakers, it's a screw compressive fitting, where if this ferrule wasn't here, it would just be smashing these individual strands in there over time as that, you know, vibrates, wiggles, whatnot. It's not going to stay together very well. Safe and reliable. So instead of a bunch of wild strands just smashed together, we've got two nice square strands that will have good contact. With the solar panel wiring done on the inside, I went to the roof to finish up the series parallel connections and then clean up the routing of the cables up there. After that, I finally got to tear apart these nasty 110 cables that have been hanging from the ceiling, breaking them into their individual components of load, ground, and neutral, and connecting those to our 110 breaker panel box and their corresponding breakers. So I've got pretty much all of the current circuits in there connected to the breaker panel itself. And I'm realizing that the box that I've got is definitely not going to be big enough. So I'm going to chop the box up, get these cables free, and I'm going to build something a little bit bigger, a little bit deeper. Okay, so I got a little breaker box whipped up here. It's basically the same thing that I already had, but it's a little bit deeper. With the batteries out of the box itself, I took the opportunity to place a protective matting on the floor of the utility cabinet itself. True to its name, to say the least. True Black is truly black. We're gonna stain these battery cases black because black it's just the coolest color out there. I put a full thick coat of the black stain on these boxes, and I did not wipe any off. I let this actually dry overnight before I applied another coat of polyurethane protectant on top of that to make this as deep black as possible, and I think they turned out pretty good. So we got the circuit breaker wired up here with the main output from the main AC output from the inverter. I actually ended up kind of backtracking a little bit because the original cables that I got for this, the 8-gauge stranded cables, were way too thick. And I found some thinner 8-gauge stranded cables that actually allows some flexibility here. So I'm just wrapping that up. I'm getting the load and the neutral connected here. Problem is, and the reason I had to go to more flexible 8-gauge stranded wires, because this is such a tight space back here. If your cables aren't flexible, there's no way you're gonna get this in there without breaking something. And I did manage to do it, but it was a massive pain in the ass, and I didn't see it working long term. So this first row here is the output, or I'm sorry, the input. So when I connect to shore power, the leads are gonna come in here, but I have to go all the way back there in the back for the AC output, which is going to my breaker. So it's pretty tight, let's just say that. So I'm using pliers here to kind of grab this, feed it into, there we go. There we go. So the other problem is that these other things are in the way all the time. So you have to kind of move these up and out of the way. And then I have to move them out of the way when I want to tighten them because the tightening screws are up top. There we go. So you may notice I went through, I attached this wire Attached this sleeving on the wires just to make everything look nice, uniform. Installed some covers. Now with our main AC output connected to the breaker, I think we can put the batteries back in, do some like cable management, make everything look nice and neat, and then get us one step closer to flipping the main switch and turning this baby on. Special shout out to everyone who's supporting me over on technobarbarian.locals.com right now. We've got a growing community of fan enthusiasts over there, so if that interests you, be sure to go visit and sign up. It's totally free. The beautification process of these cables that you're seeing here takes up only a few moments in the video itself, but this is several hours worth of work in real life. Wrapping all of those cables, heat shrinking everything, cutting everything to length, figuring out where the placement of these crimps and clamps are going to go. It was really a lot of work. Got our eye protection on. We will be dealing with live electricity now. I'm not afraid of electricity, but I do have a very, very healthy respect for electricity, bordering on fear. This is production, so we're going tight on everything here, okay? This isn't hand fitting anymore. This is the real deal. Okay, cover that up. Oh, son. Couldn't even short that out if you wanted to. There's no way to contact those metal. Okay, perfect. Manual for the inverter. Instructions for BMS. I've already looked at these for multiple hours over the last few months, and just finally time to do one last check. Never cause AC and output and DC input short circuits. Oh, okay, that's good to know. Mounting the unit did not mount the inverter on flammable construction materials. Check. All wiring must be performed by a qualified person. Check. Connecting the batteries with 2-gauge cable. Check. Use appropriate cable size for AC input and output connection. To reduce risk of injury, please use proper recommendation cable size as below. 8-gauge recommendation. Check. Before connecting PV modules, please install separately a DC circuit breaker between the inverter and PV modules. Check. Once the unit has been installed properly, batteries are connected well, simply press on-off switch to turn on the unit. Just in case. Theoretical. What's going to happen here? As soon as I flip this, you should hear a super loud annoying beep. Inverter comes on. And solar is disconnected, so that's out of the equation right now. I'm not going to turn that on yet. So we're just going to get from the battery, try to turn on the inverter. Hopefully no sparks fly. BMSs are activated. Everything is connected, ready to go for the first time ever. The brains of the operation. This is it. This is my pride and joy right here. There's really nothing left to do. Here we go. There is a power switch on the inverter. And let's try it again. Oh, hey look, we got power up here. So my inverter is just not turning on for some reason. What's happening? So the inverter's not turning on, which is, I guess, better than explosions. But let's troubleshoot this. This is on and open, which means we've got power coming from the batteries. We can see this is on, which means we have the 12 volt. These lights are powered by a 12 volt, which means this breaker is indeed working. We have power from the 24 volt to the 12 volt step down. We know we have power at the bus bar, because to get to the 24 volt to the 12 volt step down, it has to go through the bus bar. So we have power here. We just don't have power getting up to here. Connected. The main negative is connected. Oh, Jesus. Spark. What was that all about? Do I not have a good connection from this to the inverter? Alright, I'm going to disconnect. Check the connection on the negative here. May disconnect this off. So I'm not going to... Why did that spark when I moved it? That's a good connection. Okay, I guess I'll tighten that down. Whoa! There we go. That was weird. That's not a good sound. Something's in the fan. There we go. So, yeah, we had a little kind of wind up sound here because this little cable was in that fan. 26.2 volts. Got 120 volt output. I think we should turn on the solar. See what happens. Everything seems to be working here. Let's do it. That was uneventful. Oh, something changed over here. We got a new icon. Oh, heard a click. Oh, look at that. Solar. Now we've got solar to the inverter. And then from the inverter to the battery. Then from our battery to our load. Or from the inverter to the load. Okay, so yeah, we're getting 42 watts from the solar panels right now, which makes sense because the sun is down. Last but not least, well, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this in 4K. That's going to do it for this one. We've now got roughly 13 kilowatt hours of electricity to use in this thing. That is a ton of electricity. Roughly equivalent to like 11 Battleborn batteries. Now, could you imagine trying to stuff 11 Battleborn batteries in here? No, of course not. So if you want to learn how to save a ton of money and space and just get much more powerful batteries, and you have questions, well, you got to go join my private community, technobarbarian.locals.com. It's free to join, but if you want to get direct access to me, to message me with any kind of questions you have regarding anything at all, it's only 20 bucks a month. That's the cheapest consulting you're going to get. And I'll tell you what, it's going to get a lot more expensive as this fan build gets closer to completion and it gets a lot more popular online. So get in now while you can. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.